Okay, we have identified that Mr. Slumpy Dog has anti-K in his plasma, which means when we select donor units for him, we need to provide donor units that do not have K antigen on them, so that he does not have an antibody-antigen interaction with them, which causes them to hemolyze, which would lead to a hemolytic transfusion reaction. So we have selected, because Mr. Dog's blood type is A positive, we have selected an O negative unit and an A positive unit. We have labeled 2 tubes to make up 3% cell suspensions for each of those units. Those are ready to go. Those are made up in saline, and remember, we use our hemotype segment devices. So we want to do antigen typing on these, or Kell phenotyping, because he has anti-big K. And we need to use the package insert and follow the directions with the package insert to make sure that everything's going the way that it should. So we have our Immucor package insert, and we're going to pretend that this is Immucor anti-K. But what you're going to do is label 1 test tube for each donor unit as K, and then you need a positive control and a negative control to QC your antisera. So we're going to go anti-K positive, anti-K negative, anti-K 579, and anti-K 633. And we're going to put the antigen tubes next to each of them, and the positive and negative controls in front. So the next step, according to our package insert, we've got our 3% cell suspension made. They've been washed. Add 1 drop of anti-K to each one, and then 1 drop of each red cell suspension to each tube, including the controls. And then mix them, and then we're going to incubate them for 2 to 10 minutes at room temperature. So we'll go with 2 minutes. And then we'll spin them down, and that'll be the end. There aren't any check cells needed for this at all. The way that you know it works is if your positive and negative controls work. So we'll follow that, and we need to select QC. Right, we are getting ready to select our quality control for our K antigen typing. And since we are doing this by tube, we need to make sure that we have tube reagents that we're using. And we do have panel cells that are 3%. So we will take a peek at this particular one, and we're going to look for Kell negative. And we can see here, there's big K, little k. This is negative for big K. So we're going to go ahead and use cell number 1 as our negative. And we can pull that out of the kit. And there's cell number 1 that we're going to use for a negative. And then we still need to go back to K and find one that is heterozygous positive. And here we have one. It's got 1 copy of big K, 1 copy of little k, which means it's heterozygous. Does not have the same 2 copies of each one. So we'll come over here, and this is number 7. So we'll pull number 7 out of the kit as well. And number 7 is now our positive. And you will document all these on your quality control log and make sure that they work. Next, we're going to follow the directions on our package insert, which say that we should add 1 drop of anti-K antiserum to each of our tubes. So let's do that. We have our anti-K antiserum. We're going to put 1 drop in each of our tubes that we labeled. Again, mix up the dropper Don't touch the tubes. 1 drop into each. And what do our instructions say next? Instructions say next, add 1 drop of 2 to 5% cell suspension of known K positive and K negative control cells in addition to each patient or donor that you're checking. So we'll start in the back. We've got 633 going into 633. So just mix that up and put 1 drop in without touching. Same with this one, 579. And then we determined that cell number 1 was going to be our negative. And this is our negative. And it looks a bit hemolyzed because it's a little old, but that's okay. When you're done with it, put it back in the box. And next we've got number 7. And we'll put 1 drop into our positive for number 7. And next, our directions say, mix the contents of the tubes. And let it sit for 2 to 10 minutes at room temperature. So that is what we will do. We'll do 2 minutes. And then we'll be back. Our 2 minutes are up. So what does it say to do next? It says gently agitate each tube. Oh wait, back up. We've incubated, centrifuge the tubes. So we're going to do 15 seconds on high, which is what we would typically do for this type of spinning. Immediate spin type. So 15 seconds, and then we'll resuspend them and see what we get. Alright, first thing we're going to do is look at a quality control and see what happened with it. So those cells were old, so they hemolyzed. But here's our negative. Our negative should be negative with no agglutination. And it looks good. There's no agglutination there. So we record that as negative. And then our positive should have something. And it should be typically about a 2+. But because we're using old reagents, we don't have anything there. That is negative as well. So, as you're interpreting, what do you think this will mean? Positive or negative? I mean, invalid. Should be invalid because our positive control didn't work. But let's go ahead and look at these. So this is donor unit 633. And that's negative as well. And this one is also negative. So there you go. That's how you do them. It's an invalid test because it didn't work, but you don't need to do check cells or anything. So what do you think you would do in this point? Correct. You'd repeat and make sure you have indated reagents.